You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and welcome to our second day coverage of Celebration 2023. This is the first of two shows that we will have today, and we are going to get into all of the details of the Ahsoka trailer and some of the stuff that was shared this morning as part of the Ahsoka panel. And there's that keyboard right on cue. Good morning, keyboard. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, sorry. This is... but yeah, we've got a lot to discuss, and with me to my right, in the same room, once again, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing this morning? That's weird.
It is very weird to say good morning, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't think we've ever done a 10 a.m. show, so for the two people that have joined us today, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. No, it's more than two, but thank you for spending your morning with us.
Right. And so in an attempt to not use this keyboard, which is actually amazing, by the way, but our setup just isn't conducive to it, I am not going to do all of the hellos in the live stream today. So please, I know everyone's going to be very disappointed. Staff Jonathan, Dale, Miss Sunflower, good morning.
Good morning.
We'll do it now. If you were not here at the start of the show, I can't help that.
Yeah. Sorry. Too bad. So sad.
Going away. Good morning, Lauren.
And Lauren's with us. Yeah, not having any of the problems that we're having. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. It's okay. I understand. I have my own technical hangups as well sometimes, so it's all good.
This is more like a technical hangover, apparently.
Yeah, this is more of a hangover. All right. Well, if you were with us yesterday, again, last night, we kind of talked about a little bit about this trailer that was shown. We're going to pull it up and kind of step through it frame by frame. But I want to start with just some of the news that was shared on the panel this morning. We're probably going to come back and wax a lot of this a little bit later as part of our kind of day 2 coverage show, which we're doing tonight at 7 p.m. Central.
Right.
So tune in for that. But I guess the big thing was at this panel, attendees, if they got in, were able to see an extended trailer, additional footage that we have not had a chance to see. I've scoured the internet as of 6:30 this morning, and I've not really been able to find a whole lot on it.
As many that got reposted yesterday of all of the other ones, it is a shocker that we've not been able to find anything about this. And we've only found a few comments about what was different about it too. So
sure.
A little bit interesting there. Hey, a hearty good afternoon to Rod, by the way. He was actually at Celebration right now. So.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thanks, Rod. He said he's got his pin with him too. So he's
awesome.
Repping the team here. But there was a screenshot that do you want to pull this up real quick? Elon Musk made an appearance today at Star Wars Celebration. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is Grand Admiral Thrawn that we're seeing. So this is Lars Mikkelsen, who's playing Admiral Thrawn. And so this is not the best picture of him. I think we were all joking about this before we came online. Like, I would imagine he does look better than this. He's been caught mid-sentence here. This is some of the footage that was shown. They had the big reveal was at the panel, and finally seeing him. They brought him out on stage. Huge ovation, standing ovation from the audience, as you'd expect. Later on, he came out onto the celebration stage. Same kind of reception there. And at one point, just to kind of weave this in here, there was a moment there where he was talking about how he had felt so welcomed in the community, and that it wasn't just at Celebration, but it was on set and everything else. And this was like nothing he had ever experienced before. And he got another standing ovation, and he really got choked up. Like he was about to, you could see if he wasn't already crying, he was about to start crying because of just how receptive everybody's been to him and this character. And just not even know. I mean, most of these people take these gigs and they're like, sure, it's an acting gig. It's a job. I'll take it. And they don't realize just what they've stepped into until they get to, Celebration and other situations like this.
It's been an emotional morning for a lot of people at Celebration, because not only did we have, him getting emotional, Dave Filoni actually got choked up on the Celebration live stage as well. We had, oh gosh, who else was it? Oh man, one of the other actors who's it was just really cool though, just to be able to see the emotion, like what this means to the people doing the creating and bringing these characters to life, that it really does mean as much to them as it does to us,
Yeah.
the ones who consume it. So this is really exciting to be able to have the characters bring them to life from what they were in the animated fashion.
Yeah.
Now we're over the live stream. So it'd be really cool to see how well this plays out.
Yeah. So, Lauren, when you see this picture, aside from the look-alike to Mr. Musk, anything that
He's taking that blue check mark a little far, huh?
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, this is unfair. He, like you said, he's mid-sentence. It's also looking up at him. So I have full faith that once the show comes out, he's not going to look like Elon Musk. But I
right?
think he looks, other than the facial expression, the mid-sentence facial expression, I think it looks great. Like, he pretty much looks exactly like how I pictured Thrawn in my head when I was reading the books for the first time. So I think it's going to be awesome.
Yep. And for anybody that's not aware, Lars Mikkelsen is the actor who plays or did the voice for him in Star Wars Rebels. So it should be a continuation of that. He's got that very slow, methodical, different than what we heard back in like Heir to the Empire.
Very different.
If you listen to the audiobooks back then, it's a very different take.
Audio tapes,
right? Or whatever it was. Back then, it was a very different take when he brought it in. And not to, I don't want to get into the history of this, but when it first came out, when he came out on Rebels, there was a lot of banter back and forth about whether this was a better performance, less performance, whatever. One of the things that did stood out, just looking at this picture here, is the eyeballs. Because traditionally in Legends, he had no eyeballs. They were just completely red. And again, for anyone who wasn't aware or around when Rebels came out, the decision to put eyeballs on there was strictly from a visual perspective, right? As they're filming, you got to be able to see where he's looking, because that was kind of important. When you're doing the storytelling and the way he was originally conceived by Timothy Zahn, probably not as important. So the eyeballs were put in place so that we could actually see when he's making eye contact, who he's looking at when he's speaking to. And so they've continued that on here. It was a thing that I was questioning in my head, like, were they going to do this? Or are they going to leave it completely, pupilless? Because we have other characters in Star Wars, or races anyways, that don't have pupils. So it's not unprecedented to.
Yeah, but they're usually very small chunks, right? They don't really, when they have speaking parts, they're not doing a lot of speaking, or it's not, they have giant heads like a Duros, right?
Yes,
so they move their head, or they're at distance. So you don't really need to know. They're usually focused in one area. We're going to have a lot of, for lack of a better word, intimate moments with Thrawn, I think, throughout the series.
Okay. Yeah.
Or at least we're going to be engaged with him in a more direct fashion, right? So I think it's important to maintain that and to bring some of that. These eyes look a little bit lighter too. They're not the really deep, maybe not deep red, but that really vibrant red. And it could just be the washed out image because this is from a cell phone, in a crowd.
Yes.
With a bunch of lights on and a screen that's probably
you're probably right.
a billion times brighter than any TV we've got. So there's a lot of things that we'll see this play out a little bit more when we get more official content released. I can't imagine that StarWars.com would not give us an official post of Thrawn or a picture of Thrawn at some point relatively soon. So.
Yeah, and this was a question that I was thinking too yesterday. Like, I mean, it makes sense now, right? They didn't really speak about Thrawn much at all. They talked about him. We all knew he was coming, but they were saving it for this, and rightfully so. He got a spotlight on it.
Aside from in the trailer, I can't really tell you how many times I've heard Thrawn mentioned. So far, except just in very passing comments, except, well, we knew we had to get it right, but very, very basic. One of the really cool things about this before we get started, though, is that in some of the panels, Timothy Zahn is definitely involved at various stages of this. They at least call on him for advice or for comments.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a checkpoint.
It's his baby.
Exactly. So it's something that's really cool to be able to see the original creators still involved with the process. Even if it's not day to day, or they're not taking strategic direction or anything, but are we interpreting the character? Do we understand the character? How might the character respond in some of these ways? So it's a little bit fun to think about his involvement. And again, it's kind of like George Lucas, originally with any of the things we were doing when we were starting Mandalorian. Like, what do you think about this? Is this hitting the right marks? So it's great to have that confirmation, that affirmation in some ways as well.
Yeah. Well, let's the other kind of big takeaways, and we'll get, as we get more information on some of this, we'll certainly share it. But there was the Sabine holding Ezra's lightsaber was shown in the trailer as well. Sorry, I just heard a loud noise in my head. The noises are in my ears and head. So yeah, we got to see that. On top of that, there was also we got the another shot of the Purrgil. Again, I don't have a picture of this. I'm not sure what the context was. It could have been an extended shot or something, but the Purga will be around. No surprise to me.
No,
I mean, they left with them. They're probably going to be there at some point.
Makes sense.
And I guess one of the things that I really wanted to hear or see was, or listen to, they brought Kevin Kiner out, mentioned that he was kind of doing the score for this. That is so like perfect.
It's almost a requirement at this point.
Yeah,
right?
Especially coming off Rebels and the work that he did there. I mean, he's got so many great pieces that came out during Star Wars Rebels that I would have expected him to do this. So I'm glad to see that that was confirmed. But they got to hear some of the audio, some of the new tracks, or maybe the main theme for Ahsoka in this panel as well. Once I get my hands on that, I do want to listen to it because I want to see what his take has been on all of this. Because we got an Ahsoka theme-ish, right? It was more kind of a floaty force thing that came through Mandalorian when they brought her out. But this sounds like it was very specific to Ahsoka. So I'm interested to hear what that sounds like.
And maybe along those lines, as we get rolling into the trailer, Lauren, what were your initial impressions of the music that we got in the trailer?
I loved the music. That was something that I feel like the more times I watched the trailer, I mean, other things were hyping me up as well, but the music was definitely a big part of it. I loved like the strings and just kind of like the overall tone of it was just great.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the music as well. It felt very Rebels-ish. It just felt like it was perfect. I mean, it just really did work. So I hope this is actually Kevin Kiner's work. I would imagine it probably is this late in the game. Usually these things start to have a little bit more formality around them. We know that with trailers, you sometimes get, I don't want to call it stock music, but you get more, catered music to the trailer that aren't necessarily even scored by the same composer. But with Kevin Kiner's just constant involvement with Star Wars, it feels like this is probably legit. And it sounds like his work at the very least. So it's definitely hitting all the right vibes on the right notes. And I'm with you, Lauren. I think the strings in particular were really, really front and center and really perfect for what we had on screen today.
Well, and it's like you were saying, a lot of times in a trailer, the music doesn't tend to stand out to me unless it's something like particularly special. So I feel like for it to be that impactful in the trailer alone is saying something.
Yep. Okay, well, let's segue into the trailer. So we're going to spend the next 2 hours. No, maybe not that long, but we're going to go through
start the stopwatch now.
Yep,
because that will go 2.5.
It's going to go pretty long, but okay. So we start here, and we've been kind of dissecting this down for a while now here, but to me this looks like Jedi ruins, a Jedi temple of some sort. Last night I went down a rabbit hole of going through old Star Wars Rebels episodes, Mando episodes, trying to like kind of put the I'm going to call them the glyphs or the writings or whatever we have here, and we'll get a better picture of that in just a little bit to something else. And it does feel very similar. The most similar thing I found was the summoning stone,
right, that
Grogu was sitting on. A lot of that same kind of ancient, what I would assume would be ancient Jedi texts, not texts, but text in the background. We see that here. So I'm going out on a limb and saying this is some kind of a temple, and she's visiting this temple. I don't know for what purpose, but you guys have any other thoughts or different opinions there?
How cool would this be if this was the rest of Tython?
Yeah, back to Tython, I like that, yeah.
That would be really neat. I don't know if we will, because if we just got to the summoning stone, but it's that same kind of, I don't know, sandstone is the right kind of word, but that very light colored, very, very basic, but you also get some of the script writing that's, of course, in the logo for the Ahsoka series as a whole.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of consistencies with that. And so I think this would be really cool to be able to bring some of that to Tython and give us more of Tython. This is the ancient ruins. I really love that idea. So I hope this is something along those lines that really we push that forward, and we kind of continue to draw on this Old Republic, Dawn of the Jedi, if you will, type of mentality. And this, kind of the things that we're hearing from Celebration already continue to feed their way into the current content that we're going to get.
Yeah. If you look on the... and also, this kind of starts a number of voiceovers. Something's coming, something dark. She's talking about that. Any ideas, I guess, Lauren, on what she's specifically talking about? I mean, the most obvious for a lot of these is going to be, Thrawn, right? But is she speaking to just a larger threat or something very specific here? Any ideas around that?
I mean, I assumed that based on this, she would be talking about the rise of Thrawn and maybe remnants of the Empire trying to gain more power.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, like, if at this point she would have already known about the characters that we're going to see here in a few minutes.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming that she's talking about Thrawn.
Yeah. Anything different? Anything to add?
I mean, we get other characters that seem to be more aligned with the dark side a little bit later on. So it could just be this general menace, right? This general threat that is accumulating in the galaxy that's starting to emerge in some ways. So
Yeah.
I like it's a pairing. It's not necessarily just one thing. I think for us, it could be multiple angles. And the interesting part is really seeing how connected they might be, or are they kind of individual activities going on that just happen to be accumulating for the New Republic in particular.
Now this, the particular shot we got up right now. So she's standing here in what looks to be some kind of like an open courtyard again in this temple. There's this kind of a circle sigil thing on the ground here. The question I've seen posed on the internet is, why did she throw her lightsabers down, spin around, and fall in?
Because it's cool.
Because she can. Yeah. I mean, don't overthink it. Like if you're a Jedi and you have the ability to do this, yeah, I would do this and never have to get up to get my coffee and a couple of other things, right? That I can think of.
And she didn't desecrate the
circles?
whether it was decorative or whether there's meaning to it. Yeah, the stuff in the middle, she didn't damage that.
So now this comes back a little bit later. Like we see this exact same thing here in just a few minutes. So the way this was kind of edited and cut, it feels like we're kind of jumping in and out of different shorter time frames here, but more on that in a second. But
what do you make of, and maybe Lauren, what do you make of, I thought these were shadows at first that are kind of all around the stones on the inside that reach all the way into the middle. But it almost feels like this spilling darkness that's just like a plague, right? Or this type of the word escapes me, but it's something more than just shadows. It feels like there is some sort of darkness kind of plaguing this area, and you see it everywhere else around. So maybe it's just that darker sand creeping into these ruins. Maybe it's as simple as that, but I like the aesthetic and maybe some of the maybe the intention behind it, or the subtleties, the symbolism.
Yeah, like that high contrast look.
Right, but it's all coming, like it all centers in on that dial in the middle, right? Yeah. And so it kind of found its way to it. I like that idea that things are kind of encroaching upon it.
I think we get a better picture of this a little bit later. So
a little bit during the fight scene, we kind of see it from a few different angles.
Right. So she lands what looks to be in some kind of a chamber. There's more writings and markings, that sort of thing on the wall.
Lots of circles and lines and everything. Well, we look on the left side of the screen there.
Yeah, and this lines up with the logo, right? And it lines up with, presumably the World Between Worlds. More on that in just a little bit here, but it feels like this is all related in some way. I got a theory as far as when we get to the Force users too, as far as what's going on there. I could be completely wrong, but hey, wouldn't be the first time, right? So, okay, she's also says, so in continuing with what she was talking about, something's coming, something dark. I sense it, but then I started thinking, like, who's she talking to? Like, is this a conversation she's having with, Sabine? Is it a conversation she's having with? We don't really have a whole lot of people named so far in the cast, but is she having this kind of discussion with herself? And maybe it doesn't matter, but we're going to spend some time on it. So, what do you think?
It kind of seems like Sabine's the most logical choice based on what we're seeing in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just kind of go with Sabine for right now. What about you, Lauren?
Yeah, that's what I thought too, especially when we see the conversation that she's having with her later on. This almost feels like an extension, kind of like the second half of that conversation that we didn't see in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of that dialogue though is not to all Sabine, but again, who else is it? I think there are a number of characters we could go from, but I think it is in typical fashion of these trailers. It's piecemealed from a few different things, even though there's a general story arc going on kind of in the background.
Yep. And so the next voiceover that we get around this time is, and I think I've got the subtitles turned on here. By the way, we get this red Lucasfilm logo.
I love this, by the way.
I mean, to my knowledge, we've had the green, we've had the silver. I don't think we've ever had a red.
I don't know. I mean, we do get some changes every once in a while. I like this. It looks beautiful, though.
Yeah. Any significance there? What are they trying to signal? Death?
Probably a coming darkness.
The coming darkness.
That she senses.
The rise of the.
Going to go on a limb.
Yep. So call me Captain Obvious. Okay, so we get. Let's move past here. All right, so we get our first. And so what I was mentioning was that this is where we get the first voiceover from Balin. We'll get to him a little bit, but he says this is the beginning, and this is the first line, a whole string of kind of comments for him where he talks about this is the beginning. For some, it's war. For others, power. More on that here in a little bit, and definitely going to get into Balin and who he potentially could be. Balin Skull is his full name. But yeah, we've got Sabine kneeling here. Now, she does look like she has her armor on, which is different than we see a little bit later where she has no armor on. So
Right.
I interpret this scene as, okay, this is probably post Ahsoka coming in and saying, hey, we're getting the band back together. I'm going to need your help. And she's recommitting herself to looking for Ezra. And again, I'm making some assumptions here. If you caught the show last night, we kind of talked a little bit about speculation and what's going on here. But any guy, what stood out for you, Jonesy, here in the scene? Anything else that you want like to add?
I mean, yeah, this is definitely that contemplation about getting back in the fight, right? We know that Sabine is coming from a place where she is feeling withdrawn from whatever the reasons might be. We got to get more specifics there, but I think this is very much her. This appears to be on Lothal. This appears to be in Ezra's
old room,
right? So it makes a lot of sense for this to be one of those moments where she's, am I ready for this? Do I really want to do this? What does this mean? All these feelings are coming back. She thought she had escaped some of it, but then here comes Ahsoka rolling back through saying, hey, I need you. We need to do this again. We got to go figure out, we got to drive this thing through to the end this time.
Yeah. All right, Lauren.
I just love that cat.
The slow cat is the cutest. And so much cuter than the one that we got in Mando, like season 1, episode 4 or whatever.
Yeah, they really improved the look of the cat. So I love it.
It's very, very cute.
Yeah.
So last night I was kind of talking about this, and I guess maybe again this is playing into my own head theory here, but Sabine looks a little. I mean, her and Ahsoka both look melancholy, right? They're kind of walking around like their dog died or they lost their best friend, whatever. Either way, and that's probably part of it. But the way I kind of framed all this was, I just wonder. Well, hold on. I'll pin that. I want to come back to it because it makes more sense a little bit later. But yeah, so let's move on to the next part here. So we got Sabine kind of looking off in the distance here. Her hair's longer.
Yeah, back in her bomber jacket and clothes. So these are ones we see a little bit later in the trailer sitting in the room, but also when Ahsoka comes back. Yeah. Probably in these types of things. So this is also probably that establishing shot we get of Lothal.
Right. I think you're right. I think this is that first extension of that, which we'll see here in just a bit.
I like the longer hair, though. I mean, I think it's a great difference as well. It shows
time,
but also just a different place, right? Rather than the really short crop that she's really engaged all the time, keeps it short because that's more manageable, that's more practical. So I like the idea that, again, it fits the character and the somberness that we see within Sabine right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're back to the temple here. Now, I would assume this is prior to her using, and this is confusing because it very much looks like that same area. In fact, you can see what you were talking about, the shadow pointing into the middle there.
And you see the hole that she cut. So I think this is after she's come out of it. So she's got whatever she needed, and now something has intercepted her.
Yeah. Lauren, what's your take on these droids? I'm assuming they're very skinny people or beings if they're not droids. There's a tradition in the Old Republic of everything was protected by droids. Like everything is protected by droids. I don't know what the deal was, but that's where my head went initially. But any chance these things are living beings, and what exactly is their purpose?
I think that they're droids based on what I can see, but I also did get the sense that these droids have been here for a while. Maybe they were left here from long ago, kind of like what you were saying about, back in the day, everything being protected. Perhaps like they used to guard this place before it was a ruin, and then they were kind of forgotten until somebody else came back.
Yeah.
I think that another aesthetically, they're very similar to what we've seen like in Rise of Skywalker with the Sith troopers, but also pulling back from, again, Old Republic and some of that. Are they more, Sith protectors or something along those lines? So are they, again, because we know we've got this kind of hidden element going on, and with the pole arms that they're using or whatever the staffs that they're using here, these pikes, it gives off that vibe too of that kind of more of a menacing type of, a menacing type of droid. They're very Grievous inspired in some ways too. Yeah. So I like the idea that maybe they're even if this is a more of a Jedi type of temple, which we could see in the background here in the back left of the screenshot you got it on, these appear to be more temple-like for the Jedi. that there is some secret there that potentially the Sith are interested in, or Sith interested characters are at least interested in. I like that component of it as well. And it's not just Ahsoka specifically.
Right.
It's kind of a circumstantial type of thing that they've come out here.
I mean, there is a slight possibility this could be Sith temples. I'm thinking now from like SWTOR, the game. There are some structures and areas where there are temples like this. The Sith were very much more about themselves, I guess, in how they displayed their statues, but they had something similar. Like so, it's the only reason I'm even throwing that in there is because these guys look to be wielding what I would consider an electrostaff.
Right.
Traditionally, we've seen those as blue. These are very specifically red, like you mentioned. The actual blades are red. We associate that with Sith, dark side.
A little flavor of like the Praetorian guards that we get a little bit later on in Rise of Skywalker as well. So a flavor of that. But yeah, this feels like more like a Jedi place. But Lauren, any takes on the structures in the background, like the statues or what we're seeing kind of in the foreground as well?
Well, I agree with what y'all were saying earlier about it. Feels very similar to Tython. Even if it's not on Tython, I feel like it must have been built within that same period because of how similar the look is and the feel of it. So yeah, I'm thinking like distant Jedi past, perhaps something that might connect with the Dawn of the Jedi that we had announced yesterday. Just kind of spitballing there.
Yeah, that would be a nice little tie in there. I think the lead that we're all kind of burying and tiptoeing around, no pun intended, is the cankles. I mean, come on, let's be real. I mean,
you're always noticing the cankles.
They're huge. Look at her little chubby toes, or their chubby toes. Like I've never seen toes that chubby.
You know, I'm learning a lot about you this trip.
Right. It's just weird. Like I don't understand why they're so cankly.
That's the only thing weird around here.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. We'll get back to that in a little bit because there's a better shot of them. No, I'm kidding. There's not. All right. So we get our kind of first action shot here, at least space action shot. And this is the Phantom from the Ghost, Phantom 2 to be precise. And
so awesome to see this in live action.
Yeah. I mean, they did such a good job. And I mean, this is the same shot because we can clearly see it here, but it's Hera that's flying it. We'll get into Hera here in just a second as well. But that is that's a transport, right? A cargo transport thing similar to what we saw in Solo.
Yeah, like a freight hauler, right?
Freight hauler, right? And I don't know what this thing is. It could be it looks like a lid.
Yeah, it looks like an Apollo capsule, basically, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Tupperware of some sort. But they're hauling this thing away and they're firing upon the Phantom 2, which Hera's flying. So I couldn't even guess what's going on here other than it sounds like maybe she's going after this and they're trying to steal it.
Kind of seems that way. Whatever they've got something that she wants clearly, but I like that she's the one on the aggressive here. So and again, it's more of this: is this an Imperial type of freighter that's taking something that's of value? But you know, it's just really cool to see the Phantom in action, though.
Yeah, and it goes without saying. There's a lot of discussion, or always discourse, banter back and forth about who is really the best pilot in all of Star Wars. And if you're really being honest with yourself, she comes into the conversation.
Oh, in the conversation. I thought we were going to name.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to name, but
Force sensitive Poe Dameron.
She's done a lot in the series and in Rebels to make a name for herself. There's things that she's done. So I think people overlook the fact, and I'm not trying to start anything here, but yes, I would say Poe Dameron, Kylo Ren,
Tech,
Omega, right? All of these guys are the greatest pilots, Anakin Skywalker as well, right? Her name deserves to be in there. All I was getting at is that this isn't going to bode well for whoever's flying this thing. She's going to catch them or she's going to stop them. I can't see why she wouldn't, because she does.
So what do you think about the cockpit, though? Maybe Lauren, is it really capturing the vibes of what you would have expected to see live action?
I think so. It's also, I feel like when it's daylight in the cockpit, you do get a different feel than if it's dark. So I'd be interested to see what it would look like when the ship is actually in space. I think then you would get the full effect more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the lit up effect of just the lights and blinking and glowing at you.
Right, yeah, all the lights and everything and the stars in the background. I think that would be really cool to see. But for as far as the daylight look goes, I like it.
Yeah, and the cockpit is similar. The frame itself is identical, right? So the windows, the panes of glass, identical to the animation. They've added more to this. The sure. Phantom was Phantom 2 was kind of
sparse. Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot going on. And that's more from a animation thing, right? The more they got to put in there, the more they have to compute, cost more money. But there's much, it filled out a lot more here in live action than we did see in animation. So,
And I'm
Okay.
good with things being different from live action to animation, because in animation, it's an interpretation of what we would imagine it to look like in real life. So of course we're going to have some differences.
Right. So, and that's a good segue, and I'm going to go right back to you on this one because this is our first kind of. We'll get a better shot a little bit later, but so far, Hera has been mentioned. We only saw the tails, and this is a side view. This is the first view we get of her. We've already gotten Zeb. We've gotten Sabine. Thrawn now officially, even though we've already kind of commented about the Elon Musk thing. But Lauren, like when you see Hera. Any reservations about her transformation or I guess her bringing to life here or coming to life on the big screen, small screen?
No reservations. I would say that in this case, it's kind of hard to get like a real feel for it because I feel like the shots that we got of her in the trailer were limited. So I expect it's gonna work. But I almost kind of need to see her like in action, talking a little bit more, doing a little bit more for me to actually fully get into it and immerse myself.
Yeah, it feels a bit posed right now still.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to bump ahead just quickly because I do want to go to the shot where we did see her kind of full center when she says that, what was the line that she said something about? There you go, right here. Like, this is really the best shot that we've got of her. It's the first frontal shot that we have of her. I don't have anything and I know I can be critical at times, especially with some of these, with the Ahsoka brought to life, and I thought Zeb was really good. Chopper's perfect. We'll talk about Chopper in just a second, but
Droids are easy to get perfect.
they pretty much are easy. But yeah, I think for me, it's going to be when I see and then hear more of her. And we haven't really had that. I mean, she's only had like 2 lines, and I just don't know what that's going to sound like because in my head, I've got 4 seasons of what Hera should sound like, right? Quote, air quotes, should sound like and look like. So we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully I don't have the same kind of reaction I did with Ahsoka because I felt like I was, and continue to be a little bit Debbie Downer on that one. But what do you think?
I was going to say that too about Ahsoka. It's with the voice being different. That's always been my hang up with Ahsoka. So I'm hoping that I can get past that.
And I've gotten used to Ahsoka's voice, so maybe I will here too, because Vanessa Marshall's voice, just like Ashley Eckstein, is just so iconic. The character. Yeah. It's just embedded with what we expect of it. And we were talking visually that Mary Elizabeth Winstead, or not specifically to her, but the character of Hera from a visual aspect of getting any actor to play that is really difficult. If you look at how Hera is drawn, very high, sharp cheekbones, very kind of gaunt face, almost very thin, very narrow. Very difficult to find any actor that's going to do that and still feel like they've got enough substance to be able to literally kind of fill out and still feel like a strong person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a bit of a challenge here because when I saw it, I know my initial reaction to Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera, was much fuller in the face, right, than we're used to. That's not a knock or anything; it's just her body style. And so, but I think aesthetically, they really did get it right. I mean, they've kind of hit all of the major points where she's very consistent, costuming wise and everything else. But it's just going to be that adjustment period for us of saying, okay, this is the character in live action. And the voice is always the most difficult for me, rather than the visual aspect of it, because when you're doing something else and you've got Rebels on in the background, you just know who all these people are, and so it's difficult to make that transition back and forth. But so far so good. I think some of it will be the cadence, right, and some of the how does she express care, and also when she needs to get more, I don't know, emphatic about making a decision or telling others what to do. I think those would be the moments that really give us a lot more of what Hera sounds like in live action.
No, I like that. That leadership aspect is something that's very, very quantitative for this character. Like, we see it a lot. We hear it a lot in Rebels. And so you would expect it to carry on as somebody who's lived through all of this now and past Return of the Jedi. I mean, she's very seasoned at this point and a lot more than she ever was. So
those are always the most telling moments for a character anyway, but I think they'll be the most telling points for the actor in portraying that character as well. How well can they do that and bring that to life?
And I had the comments buried here a little bit, so I apologize for not keeping up with them. I guess for relevant, just go to Jeff real quick. He says, I think the look will be fine. Vanessa Marshall just brought so much heart to the character. That'll be the hardest part to replicate.
Yeah, there you go.
Neil's with us this morning and says, great actress who has a good likeness. So I think the reception to her playing Hera has been positive,
Yeah, it has been
overwhelmingly
positive.
positive. So I think we're in good shape there, right? To Neil's point.
I'm not really sure I've heard any negatives because I think most people just kind of understand it now.
Yeah,
right. We're over some of the shock of seeing real people play these characters that are drawn in unrealistic ways.
I
All right,
also think the
go ahead,
excitement
please.
the excitement of having these characters translate into live action at all, it does kind of make me be a little bit more generous with my like it's like I don't want to complain. I'm just happy that we get Hera, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. All right, let's talk about this jerk face. Everybody's favorite cankerous droid.
I love your word choice sometimes. It just amuses me so much.
He's just so perfect. And he's up there. You can't really see him. He's right behind there. But he is my favorite droid. I've grown to love him more, I think, than R2. And I know that sounds sacrilegious to most, but is there something about his personality and just how much of a jerk he is? And he's so sarcastic, which I just absolutely love. Like, it's a good trait for me as far as I'm concerned.
It's the one. I mean, there's a lot of people that are with you actually. So Thrawn or Formalis, this is like one of his favorite characters, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about attitude with droids, you think R2D2, and this is like the modern R2D2 for us. Of like that has that same spirit and just captures it and embodies it so perfectly for an entirely different generation.
Yeah.
That you just want to see both of them get into some mischief. I want it like when we think about like droids, like we've talked, there's droids content coming eventually. Why can't it just be buddy cop with R2D2 and Chopper?
Yeah, right. That'd be great.
I mean, that's the buddy cop that we really need, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it says Chopper grunting on the subtitles. I guarantee you he's cussing. Like, there's no doubt in my mind there's F-bombs being dropped at this moment, and we just can't see it or hear it. So,
well, he was at Celebration on the stage, so he was probably dropping it.
Yeah. Okay, so we get the next part here, and again, there's a continuation going on with Baylan talking about this is the new beginning for war, for power, and then we get this kind of like Phantom Menace. I'm going to call it a Darth Maul entrance, for lack of a better term. Right, the door opens up, and we're introduced to Shin Hatai, which is her name. Okay, so a couple things about Shin Hatai. We'll probably kind of wax in Baylan as well here. But I did want to, this has been pointed out a number of times, and you can see it. I'm going to fast forward just a second here I'm trying to get to the braid. Yeah, it's probably better when she takes the hood off here. Let me back up here. But there's a little Padawan braid, if you notice, right there in the middle of the screen. Okay, so yes. So, okay, right. So Padawan braid. But yeah, she's wielding, what's that?
It's a different spin on things, doesn't it?
Yes, it does puts a big spin on things, I think, for a lot of reasons, of course. But so Sith have never had Padawan braids, ever. It is exclusively to Jedi. And so we can get into now about kind of theories about who these people are. I know you had found some information online about the Norse mythology and the background of these characters. So why don't you take that real quick, and then we can turn it over to Lauren to kind of give her thoughts on who the heck these people really are and what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. So the last names of both of these characters, so Baylan, Skull, and then Shin Hatai. So Skull and Hatai in Norse mythology are wolves that chase the sun and the moon. Sound familiar, Dave Filoni?
Yeah, wolves.
I mean, everything with wolves. And again, chasing. I mean, it's also embedded within the idea of the whole world between worlds as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the mechanic of it just makes a lot of sense, but also how does that bridge back to these characters? Are they, she's dressed in gray, like darker tones, but are they Sith-like? I can't really tell what's on her belt. She's got some sort of emblem on her belt there, but are they really truly Sith? I mean, we look at the lightsabers and they're this really orange, and they don't have there's more of this white core that we're used to, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe what that means, but it's a different component of it though. But again, so I hate to keep bringing it up, but like, what's the Luke Skywalker angle of some of this from an Academy standpoint?
Yeah.
Are these characters that have been left behind? Are they even involved with that? Are these just coming out of nowhere as they've grown up in this world without Jedi or without teaching, so they've just done the best they could, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of questions with these characters, but I love the aesthetic. I mean, she's just killing it here. I like it. I mean, quite literally, she's about to do a lot of killing, but yeah, she's knocking it out of the park here.
Lauren, what are your kind of opening thoughts on these two characters in particular?
Well, I do love the entrance. The dark hood is very ominous and cool. But yeah, I also think that the way that the lightsabers look with they do seem like not as bright as we would expect them to be, and like this very orangey red. I have to think that that's intentional as far as like the the brightness of them and all of that. So I don't
Yeah.
think that they're Sith. I almost wonder if there's some sort of like maybe a spin-off branch of the Jedi that maybe they're not full dark side users, but maybe they are taking things in a bit of a different direction that maybe they believe is more effective. Perhaps like adopting like a different sort of doctrine that is
Maybe something from the
inspired.
role playing games.
Um,
I'm trying not to say it.
in SWTOR, this is around, but no, not in the role playing game.
But
Sorry.
in the old school role playing games, you have the Imperial Knights.
Oh yeah, true.
So the Imperial Knights are a whole kind of different angle of some of the stuff that they borrowed from this before, right? From West End Games and all of that. So,
yeah.
And I think when we'll get to Balin here in a minute, we get some really great looks of him when him and Ahsoka are squaring off. But you look at the aesthetics of that outfit, and even when she's driving or piloting the starship, you see some of those aesthetics with the pauldrons and just the how the breastplates kind of look, not really plates, but just the leather armor, the cloth here. So yeah, we'll get to some of that. But what's your theory on the lightsabers, Albert? I know you're dying to tell us all about what you think about the lightsabers.
Well, don't oversell this. I think I said
it's going to melt your mind and it's going to be amazing. But
no, it's not. I think we may have mentioned it last night on the show, or maybe I don't know.
I think we beat around the bush.
We were just talking about it. So a couple things. Again, I would agree too. I think I said this last night, but the intention of making these orange and not have that white glow and look different, that's purposeful, right?
Yeah, agreed.
It's consistent with these two characters explicitly and exclusively. We've already seen Luke in the Mandoverse, and his lightsaber looked just fine, like we would expect it to see, right?
Kylo Ren's in the future, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's an intent here for that. Now, could these lightsabers, these crystals, be synthetic? Right? Could this be the beginning of synthetic crystals formally, canonically in Star Wars? They were first mentioned, I think, officially in Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. It's the idea that that synthetic crystals were out there. It's a different take than what we had in Legends, and we won't get into all that right now. But because they're not true, real kyber crystals and they're synthetic, maybe that's why we get the orange solid hue versus the more natural kind of blending of white light in whatever color. That's one thing I would think.
I can see that. Yeah.
So and there's probably reasons for that. Without the theory I'm about to tell you in a minute, just from a pure, if we think about the time frame that we're in right now, kyber crystals are kind of rare.
Very rare.
Right? They're not out there like they were during the times of the High Republic, and certainly during the times of like around Phantom Menace era, right? So and they're becoming more and more scarce because we know Kylo Ren and the First Order are going through and they're purging these things and they're mining all of Ilum, boring that out. They're using this for weapons, and they outfitted all of their Star Destroyers with kyber crystals. Right. Out there when we get to the Rise of Skywalker. So it's a hot commodity to have a kyber crystal. So that could be one reason why they've gone to synthetic crystals, and they're probably the only two people that we know, at least right now, that are using them. So the other theory that I had, though, there's something that's bothering me about the scene that we get with Balin and Ahsoka.
Okay.
All right. And let me see. I think it's coming up. So let me just fast forward because I don't have it in my, I know it's in my notes, but I just want to go to this scene real quick. And this is going to feed into, some crazy headcanon stuff here. But this scene where you see, okay, right here. So Balin seems to be here already.
Right.
Right. Now, what I would, in my head, I would think that if there was somebody that was threatening, and let's just assume this is the world between worlds, okay? If he was going after the world between worlds or whatever, it feels like this would be the inverse. Ahsoka would be trying to stop him. The way I'm reading this is he and potentially, what was her name again already? Shin, right? Are somehow defenders or protectors, people that are trying to prevent other people from using the world between worlds. So they may have been Jedi Knights at some point, right? He's got a Padawan, and they've kind of been living here. They've been tasked with this or whatever. We don't know how time travel, how passes in the world between worlds also. So I want to just put that out there because I know people are like, oh, well, it's been around they look pretty young. Why wouldn't they be old? We don't know how time traverses. But in my head, what I was thinking is these guys have been tasked with protecting and ensuring that people don't use the world between worlds. You have somebody like Ahsoka who wants to use it either for a couple different reasons. You could say because she's trying to get Ezra, she's trying to prevent Thrawn from doing something, right? Or go back in time, fix that moment, or whatever it is. But then I just started thinking, well, then for both of these characters, you know, that would explain why maybe she has a Padawan braid. They're still technically good, but they're almost kind of neutral. And I don't want to use gray because I'm not talking about that, right? But they have a bigger purpose. They serve a higher order, a higher purpose in ensuring that this never falls into the hands of good, evil, Jedi, Sith. They're just taking that middle ground. And so if they use a red lightsaber or an orange lightsaber and it's synthetic, I don't think it really matters to them, right? It's all about the higher mission, which is ensuring that this thing does not get taken over and used for nefarious purposes.
You want to have any comments on that before I get started, Lauren?
I actually love that. And it is not, when I watched this, every time I watched it, I assumed that he was the one trying to get in and she was trying to stop him. But I do really like the flip of that, of if she's actually the one trying to get in and they're trying to stop her. So I think that could be really cool and a cool way to, I don't know, to take the storyline if that's what they're doing. So I'm on board with it.
I like the idea of it. Let me just preface it with that. The part I have a hard time with is that we see both of them killing rebels or killing New Republic people. I mean, we see this specifically like throughout the trailer in more than one instance, so that they're defenders in some kind of way. Now, could they be going to try to find this information or, you know, pull it out of people? Maybe, especially if they're maybe a bit more ambiguous with how they decide to use the Force, or they don't have this morality, you know, as part of it as Jedi. Yeah,
and that's where I was going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the challenging part for me to understand, is that they don't seem real. They don't have the red eyes or anything like that. So to be fair, so I think to again draw more away from the Sith, which I totally agree with you there. I don't think they're Sith in any kind of way, but you know, what is it what the motives are though? It seems like they're going to some pretty extreme moment here to either get information or whatever it might be through the New Republic specifically. And that tells me when we see Shin firing on, you know, what appears to be Ahsoka's ship, right? You know, and again, I have a feeling that the ship that Shin's on in this screenshot is the same one that we see Hera on, talking to Mon Mothma and all the senators as well. So it seems like this is all catered in this one spot, and they are hunting these people in some way. To me, that seems less defenderish in that way.
I almost wonder if maybe they feel like the New Republic is getting in the way of their mission that is above and is greater than the New Republic, though. And maybe that's why they feel like, well, we have to kill them because what we're guarding here is much more important.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think if they were to qualify it in that kind of way, I think you're absolutely right. I think they always, I mean, this is always usually that is kind of I don't know if it's a trope, Lauren, you're the expert in that regard, but the idea that I have to save you from yourself, even if it means I need to take a really firm line and be not only assertive, but I need to be aggressive. I need to be destructive in some ways as well.
Yep. So, I mean, I'll try to put some more thought into that. This is the stuff I think about at 4 a.m. as I'm trying to go to bed. But the other
he's not kidding. This is true.
The other thing is we'll know more as time goes on. There was a comment that was made this morning by the actress. What was her name available? Ivana.
Yeah, Ivana Lee Sockno.
Lee Sockno, right? Yeah. She had mentioned that she called this character ambitious, intense, aggressive was the word that was used as well.
Right.
And she did confirm that she was a Padawan to Balin's character. So all that could line up. I mean, I could be completely wrong. There's probably more to it. To your point, though, if they're aggressively hunting people, then yeah, they're not. I would say they're not on either side, and they feel like for whatever reason, the New Republic, Ahsoka, even just being out in the galaxy is a threat, and they've got to extinguish that before it gets out of hand, right? And I know that's a lot to get there when we don't have that kind of context in the trailer, but yeah, I would agree.
Right. And so when asked what if there was one thing that Ivana wanted us to know about her character, she said that she wants her humanity to expand to our understanding of the darkness within and the reasons behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That's paraphrasing, of course, but so it's an interesting idea of that falling into darkness. So there is definitely a darker element of it, but to your point, even to the theory's point, it doesn't always mean that you start off with ill intent, right? You just start to be consumed by some of this stuff too.
Yeah.
Which to me, in that context, it almost feels like they want to use the world between worlds in some way like that, rather than like trying to stop someone else from using it. I mean,
well, it could be both. It could be selfish purposes,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, it could be very much both. Like the way that you're going to do is not the way that needs to be done, or we can't share this, right?
Right. Exactly.
Which is probably dumb, but it's dumb to use any of it, right? But I think Ahsoka probably understands that better than most. So it would be interesting to see where Ahsoka lies on this right now, whether or not she's feeling desperate in some kind of way to where she would want to use it, where she has told Ezra, you already did too much.
Yeah.
You know, so has that perspective changed for her?
Yeah, exactly.
I have a feeling probably not, is my guess, because I think she seems pretty rigid in some of those moments, but I think also we're going to see her transition back towards, you know, maybe being a Jedi is what some of the text later on in this trailer suggests. So we'll have to see how that continues to play out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, she was the first person to tell Ezra, hey, let it go, right?
Right.
This is not going to change anything. But the counter argument is a lot of time has passed.
Absolutely.
She could be very desperate, right? And feels like if Thrawn really is truly the threat and Palpatine is not, because he's not returned yet, then maybe this is, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures, and she's kind of given in a little bit.
Lauren, does that sound like Luke Skywalker and Ben Solo to you?
I mean, I do think that, you know, if she feels like she's exhausted all her other options, I think that she's still willing to do what she needs to do. So,
right. Even the best of us are suspect to moments of poor decision making, right? I guess is maybe
100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Especially if she's desperate, nothing else is working. It's a dire enough threat. All of that to me makes sense.
Yep. I used this joke yesterday, but yeah, I've gotten to a lot of bad relationships with that kind of approach. So
with Star Wars? Yeah, mostly through Star Wars.
Mostly through Star Wars as well. Okay, so hey, real quick, can you, there were some comments that were made also by Ray Stevenson about his character, just in the context of what we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what did he say there?
Yeah, I was going to come to it. We got to the screens here in a minute. But yeah, so he's been around for a while in the galaxy. Is he a good guy, or is he a bad guy, or is he something else entirely? So again, this more ambiguous way of thinking. Maybe you start off in one way. Maybe you're not really, you don't have ill intent, but you get down that path. But also some of the themes and inspiration. This is where I wanted to come back to. So I'm going to save that one until we get to this screen right here. So
okay.
We're not far enough away. We're not far away. So we'll come back to that here in a minute.
Yeah. I mean, we're only like 30 seconds into this trailer and it's already 52 minutes of a show. So, you know, whatever.
Right on target.
Okay, we talked about these scenes last night a little bit. This looks like the recreation of it looks like the recreation of the ending of episode or season 4, right? The finale.
Yeah, I bet.
But it is different because, I mean, she's got the longer hair, and I didn't even think about that last night when we were just kind of talking. But it does look like what's sad for me is what you mentioned earlier. Like Sabine feels like she's been here this entire time. A lot of time has passed. Ahsoka seems to be coming back over to Lothal. This is Lothal. Clearly, it's Lothal. You can see the city back there. This is the exact same tower that Ezra was living in. So we opened with episode 1 of Star Wars Rebels with this shot. We close the entire series with this shot, and we're opening up in Ahsoka with this shot. So very cool that they've kind of kept that very consistent. But I think, again, the sad thing, the takeaway here, is that it does look like she's been here for a very long time. And the theory I had last night was that I think Ahsoka abandoned this idea that Ezra is ever going to be found, right? I can't find Ezra. We can't find Thrawn. No harm has happened. So she may have given up because she's had other duties, right? Other responsibilities in the galaxy. And Sabine has taken this almost personal. Like we committed to this, right? We said we were going to do this. We began this journey together. You dropped out for other reasons. I've stayed committed, and I've kind of been here all along. And a little bit later, we can see that body language, I think, come out from Sabine, like, so you're coming back and you want to do this again? Like what, you know, that kind of thing.
It was one of those ideas that when they were at the end of Rebels, you know, things change at some point, and that didn't change in the way that Sabine felt about it. And she probably ran out of options really quickly. And now all of a sudden things have changed again. And now she's back. Ahsoka's back. And so from Sabine's perspective, I could see where this would be very frustrating and probably a lot of resentment built up over these years that they've maybe not seen each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sabine saying it's been a while. Yeah. So clearly we know they had a disconnect here, but I think this resentment has built up. The body language says itself. I mean, arms crossed, standing kind of cockeyed.
Well, look at this,
leaning away. Yeah.
Yeah. So this shot right here.
This is in Lothal though.
This is in Lothal. But this is a very, like, she did her homework. This is how Sabine stands a lot in the series as an animated character.
Especially whenever she's trying to move her point.
Yes. No. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Natasha Luberty's. I mean, you talk about how difficult it is to get characters to be really capture an animated character.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! I mean, Sabine's not an easy one either, but they've cast this one perfectly. And like you said, she's done her homework. She's studied. She knows the animation or the body language side of it. She knows what to do physically with this character, and she's already getting some of the attitude as well.
I feel like she's even got the facial expressions, which seems like it would be hard to capture.
Agreed.
That's very true. This little smirk thing right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's lifted right off the screen or the animated screen. So,
and I have a feeling if we go back, because we've seen some images from Celebration where she does have the short crop top hair, and so I'm wondering, wondering at some point if she will cut her hair when she decides to get back in the fight, right? I like that. That's pretty typical, right? When these you have someone that's been down and out, they've kind of let things go, like Thor, you know.
Well, I was going to say, from a practical standpoint, your hair flowing out of the helmet. I don't know. You would know. How does that? Well,
with Mandalorians and stuff, you saw this with Ragnar. Whenever he puts the helmet on in one scene, it's kind of hanging out, and then all of a sudden, it's like all nicely tucked away. So I think the helmet's like sucking all up in there.
Oh,
I also feel like cutting your hair can be kind of like a symbol of transformation as well. Like if she feels like she's gonna kind of reinitiate herself into the fight, cutting her hair might be like something that's part of that.
Right. Mm-hmm. She's going from dad bod to god bod.
Sort of. Yeah. I guess I
Well, the Sabine equivalent of what
the Sabine equivalent of what a dad bod.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah, that transformational aspect, you physically see it, you visually see it. You don't just hear it or just, kind of experience it that way. It cements it for the character as well. You have made that transition. You are now something different than you were before.
Yeah. And now staying on that theory of, she kind of abandoned the mission. Sabine feels a little resentment because of that.
She altered the mission.
Yeah, I pray I don't alter it any further.
Right.
Ahsoka says here, things have changed, right? And she's clearly saying, okay, yeah, you're right. I left. However, things have changed. We've got to get back together and go find Ahsoka, or we got to go find Ezra. But really, I think for her, it's about more finding Thrawn.
I don't think it has anything to do with Ezra. But then again,
to Sabine, it's about Ezra, right?
That connection.
The two are together.
It's difficult to make the distinction between that connection when the two of them get together. It has to be about Ezra,
right?
But it can't not be also about Thrawn, because Ezra and Thrawn are connected in some way as well. Still,
I almost wonder though, like in Ahsoka's defense, a little bit. I almost wonder if it's a situation where it's like, look, the trail went cold. There's only so much we can do, and actually now I have a lead, so I'm going to come back because now we actually do have something that we might be able to act on when maybe previously before we didn't.
Right, new information. Right, new intelligence, Morgan Elsbeth.
Right. Well, and Ahsoka taking the emotional element, it's probably always had the emotion element drawn back a little bit, where Sabine is more emotional in this because of how she viewed this family, right? In many ways, a family, right? That it's just such an iconic quote for Rebels, And so they're more than what even Ezra coming in late. So I think that's important to note as well. But no, I totally agree with you, Lauren. I think that's a spot on them.
Yeah. And I think Sabine has that commitment. Like he explicitly told her, Sabine, whatever, right? And they committed to that at the very end. So like, I'm not disagreeing with anything. I think we're all saying the same thing here, but I do like that idea too, that it really isn't, I'm not trying to paint Ahsoka as sinister and just kind of like abandoning the mission, but you're right. I mean, it was just, there wasn't anything to go off of, and how long can they really realistically keep this going when other things in the galaxy are calling her, and the need to go out there and be who she is for other people is weighing heavily on her. She can't just commit every single day to that, like Sabine has. Yeah.
Well, I think something else here is that the overarching narrative here that Ahsoka is giving, I'm curious if this is all to Sabine. Because things have changed when you're saying that clearly that she's talking to Sabine, but it feels like the rest of it could be really dialogue for something else too. Why would telling her whispers about Thrawn and heir to the Empire and things like that? If I'm Ahsoka, I've probably got enough self-awareness to where I understand that those things might not mean as much to Sabine unless they are desperate for people. Right? We need warriors. We know the New Republic at this stage is dismantling. We know they're deconstructing the military, all that stuff. So maybe it's more from that angle that she needs to bring her back in the fight.
Yeah.
But the question is whether Ahsoka's in that fight right now, right?
Right.
Because we don't really know what Ahsoka does in between hanging out with Mandalorians.
Yep. Listening for Grogu or whatever. So here are the, because we get these 3 transports. I'm assuming these are kind of New Republic transports.
I think these are like an evolution of like Mon Cal type of ships.
Yeah.
The inside, if it's the same ship inside, it has those similar aesthetics.
Yeah, they kind of cut the backs off on them, I guess, from what we're used to seeing. We talked a little bit about this shot last night, and there was one thing that stood out to me a little bit. When you first see this, right, by the way, that was Kaz's father, like confirmed to the right of Mon Mothma there. So to me, that there's no doubt in my mind this is the New Republic, right? So Mothma is part of the New Republic. I think she's probably going to have some strong words with the leadership because they're kind of running the place into the ground a little bit here. But what was interesting that stood out to me was that this seems to be like a counselor ship, or they're having some whatever these transport ships are. They're talking to New Republic Council for something, right? But what was interesting is her face, and everybody looks here pretty pleasant, pretty happy. If we just go like 2 frames over, there's a moment where she's very bothered by something. Like, I hate to be dramatic, but look at her body. I mean, we've seen this so much in Andor. We know her now.
You're just following her lead. She's looking dramatic. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at it there, she says, I started hearing whispers, and the timing's different, but she got some bad news of some sort, something that's not sitting well with her. And it could, again, just be Thrawn. But any you guys have any theories as who's delivering this message and what's being told here?
I almost wonder if it has something to do with, not only is Thrawn coming, but the New Republic is also not prepared. So, I mean, she could be disappointed and frustrated with the state of the New Republic right now as well.
Or the lack of response or the lack of preparation. She feels like she's the voice screaming, or she's going to be a voice screaming, hey, there's the second coming. We've been through all this before. And the New Republic's like, nah, we're fine.
Right.
Well, I think also Mon Mothma's been on that side where she's the one resisting some of that too, right? When it comes to the difference between her and Leia, what we know from the books, they started to have a bit of a dissonance there. Of Mon Mothma, I think, understood that something was happening, but they weren't in a position to go and rebuild the military. They didn't want to rebuild the military, and so and again, this kind of goes to Carson Teva. This is the connectivity with Mandalorian, I think, too, is that something's happening out here. Yeah. I don't know what yet, but something doesn't feel right. But we started to see this in Mandalorian. That's why some of those scenes, even though they feel a little out of place, are really important for us to help understand where the New Republic is in this moment. We could argue about execution a little bit, but the story itself is very, very clear that they are in a position of, we are not a militaristic government. Yeah. We do not really necessarily have a standing military, for the most part. If we do, it is very much a policing thing. And I think that's been very specific with Carson Teva and them. They call them officers. They call them blue. They're not saying, they're not using all of these other real official, militaristic terms like we would see with respect for an admiral. We don't hear some of these terms as much now. So we hear them more in these policing type of things, the beat cop basically, rather than the militaristic aspect of it. So I think that difference with when you have people that may be out in the field, and I like the idea that it's a consular ship, so I'm looking for the ambassador at this point. Yeah. But, so is it that they're hearing things and she's hearing this concern, but we can't make that leap because we just, my hands are tied kind of thing. And this is the problem with politics and politicians that she feels within Andor, right? So I like the idea that there's that conflict, but what can you really do about it? This is a very different position than what she's in with Andor. She's on the other side of the coin. And so it could be a much more challenging thing because she has all of this history of what she's said in front of people and what led to the New Republic in the first place in rebellion, right? Yeah. And I don't want to string all this together because I could be wrong, but again, this is part of the trailers and why they do this stuff. But you look at the interior, the aesthetic of this ship. Later on, when Balin is doing his best Vader impersonation. Looks very similar. It all looks connected. I mean, this looks like that's probably the door where when Shin's on the bridge. Mm-hmm. It all looks like it's all contained within this, in this scene, in this moment, in this episode. Yeah. All right. More on that here in just a second. Okay. So the back of the head that shook the world, right? Essentially is what we're looking at here, because this has been discussed so much. I mean, the audience, every time this was shown, people went crazy. He's probably got, this is a very, like the silhouette, the outline of this character. It's so iconic. It's similar to me, at least for like Vader and some of these other characters. You just see the back of it. You know exactly who it is. There's no question about it. I mean, we have the blue skin. You can't really tell in the feed that we've got going on right now, but it's definitely Thrawn. And unfortunately, this is all we got yesterday. Although we talked earlier about the showing him here. This, for me, feels like this is a flashback of sorts.
Okay, and I say that because later on, when we get the picture of Morgan Elsbeth, and it's just right here, this is the same cockpit, and we get a much older Morgan Elsbeth in here, maybe older looking, but she's almost, to me, when I put these two scenes together, it feels like she's reminiscing about the good old days of what Thrawn was like where he was. She's on the ship. I don't think she's on the ship with him. I could be wrong, but I just wonder if this is a flashback of some sort. And you know, the part 2 of that is her coming back and saying, "Oh yeah, thinking he maybe even thinking back on this moment. We don't know, but this looks like to be his a ship of his sort."
Yeah, I agree. I think it does. I'd like the idea of a flashback here that she's recalling. She looks a little, maybe not worse for wear, but a little older, a little more disheveled maybe than what I remember her in Ahsoka. But of course, at the end of Ahsoka, she was captured, right? Yeah. So how did she get out of that too? Was she blasted out with Moff Gideon? You know, those types of vibes, or was there something else entirely that we're getting some different concept for? But a question for y'all: did y'all figure out what the logo is on the floor? You can see it more in the Morgan
one, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, right there. Yeah, I don't know what, I couldn't find what this emblem, if it had any kind of significance though. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what kind of ship this is. Is this a Chiss?
Is it a Chiss ship? I'm trying to remember back from the Thrawn books how they describe those, but
well, they don't have droids though working the ship though either.
That's true.
Yeah, and I don't know if we would be able. They seem like they're very kind of like Imperial. I think is what we usually visualize in our minds when we think about these. They have a lot of people on the bridge. They have, you know, perhaps different levels of, you know, like physical levels of where people are ingrained in the bridge and all that stuff. So, any thoughts on that, Lauren?
I almost just assumed it was just decorative. I mean, we know that he likes his ornate
art means something, right? Yeah.
Right. That's true. So, I mean, maybe decorative, but perhaps it has some sort of symbolism, but I didn't think it was any sort of like a specific logo.
I really do hope with Thrawn, to that point, Lauren, I hope we really do get the element when we do get Thrawn, this whole artistic element, because it's accentuated in all of the Chiss Ascendancy books and whatever it's called, the Ascendancy novels. And really throughout Thrawn's canon history is his interpretation of art, the meaning of art behind other cultures. I really would love to see some of that actually come across on screen at some point. I don't know if this is going to be the right series for it, but I hope we get that, because it was in Rebels too. So bringing that forward too, but maybe in a more specific kind of way.
I feel like they would have to at least mention it, because I feel like that's such a integral part of what makes him so smart and effective, is that he is willing to like examine things like this and learn from these types of materials. And it's something that has made him, you know, partially made him so strong as he is. So I think they would have to at least mention it.
Right. At the end of the day, he's really a student of anything.
Scholar.
I mean, militaristic more than anything else, but just a student in general.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the Chiss way, I think, for the most part. I guess that's not true. The 9 ruling families have given a lot of examples of that. They're not really that studious at times.
Yeah. Speaking of nine ruling families, so for anybody that's not familiar with it, there are essentially 9 ruling families in the Chiss ascendancy. They're where they live, right? And I was going back and looking at the symbols because I thought, well, maybe this is one of them that I just wasn't thinking about. Because it does look like it's, I'm going to call it like a tower. I don't know, that darker part in the middle there. But no, this doesn't look like any of the symbols for any one of the 9 ruling families. So who knows? I mean, it could be a couple different things, but nothing there. No smoking gun, at least from that perspective. But yeah, so same ship. I think we'll get back to Morgan here in a little bit. Yeah, we have this really quick shot here.
Yeah. Do y'all think this is? I think this is probably
Balin and Shin.
Yeah, one or the other or both. Yeah, coming in. I agree.
Coming in. I mean, it doesn't look like a counselor or Jedi counselor ship. It's almost like the inverse of it. But
they're not coming in hot, and there's no blaster fire, so I'm not sure what to make of that either.
Yeah,
but yeah, because it doesn't look like Ahsoka's ship.
No, right. Okay, so we get this quick shot of Ahsoka. This does look like that planet of Corvus from chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, which was the Jedi. The forest planet that she was on. I don't know who she'd be talking to here, honestly, because that felt like, at least what we got from that particular episode, this was kind of a desolate planet. She was really only there to kind of hunt down Morgan Elsbeth. She had already captured her. Maybe this is a continuation of that conversation with Din. I don't know.
I don't know that it would mean anything to Din Djarin.
Exactly. Well, either way, but and we'll talk about Heir to the Empire. No, we're not. We won't. We'll save that for our Patreon show. But Lauren, any crazy whack theories as to who she'd be speaking to at this point? Is she just having her own kind of like? Is she monologuing?
She has to be speaking to somebody the way that she's talking, but I was not able to come up with anybody who seemed probable. Because who would be on this planet?
Yeah, on Corvus. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm like, because she seemed like she was deliberately out there by herself.
Who was the mayor? Remember, he was imprisoned in the little fort thing.
Yeah, he didn't really.
Yeah, and he was helping her.
So
I don't know if this means anything to a small part of the galaxy. Who
okay, well, Mr. Brainiac, who is it?
Well, I mean, it could be a Sabine. That it was if her and Sabine link up and she's able to come back and take her back. Now, why she would operate out of Corvus? I'm with y'all.
It's the Corvus piece that throws me off, honestly.
Right, because it didn't feel like she was based there. Right, this wasn't her home base that she was just kind of going back to. She was there for a purpose. So I agree with you there. And maybe it's not Corvus. Maybe it's just something that looks similar. It's just
very true.
Fog and as daylight is coming or something like that. But yeah, and this is what I was saying before. Like when she's talking to Sabine in person in Lothal. While the dialogue flows very well, this is the part that throws me off. Is like, okay, who is she talking to at this point in this moment? And maybe it could be a surprise character too that we're just not anticipating, or maybe we don't want to anticipate. So it's interesting though to speculate who it might be, because there's a whole list of people you could throw in here, but I just don't know if anyone were responsible to throw out there at this point.
In the full context of the dialogue that's happening here, she starts off by I started hearing whispers about Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire, right? So clearly she is, and we got this from Mandalorian. I mean, there's no surprise here, but she is hot on the trail of Thrawn because she's worried that with Thrawn's return, so does the return of the Empire, and she does not want that to happen. Now, I know it's not a capital H, and I'm not going to go get excited here or whatever, but I do wonder if they are going to take some kind of a new spin on Heir to the Empire, and not in every aspect of it all, right? But just that threat that was there. The one thing that we talked about too, though, is if you really get into the books and understand what the context of the title means, they're not talking about Thrawn.
Right.
Heir to the Empire was always Luke Skywalker. So does Luke Skywalker come into this as well? There's a lot of ways this thing could go at that point, but
yeah, and I think with Heir to the Empire, Thrawn has never been one to really crave power. For the most part, it was in service of someone. It was in service of something bigger than himself. So this would be a potentially very big character shift.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what the books did do, though, not to everyone's liking, is that they did start to call in a bit of questioning of where Thrawn's loyalties truly lie, whether that is with Palpatine and the Empire, as we knew it, or with the Chiss Ascendancy.
Yeah.
Never in any of those things do I recall, and maybe Lauren, you can help me out here, has Thrawn ever really been self-centered about him having that control as a true, as a true figurehead for a society, for a culture, for a military, anything like that?
I agree. I never really got the sense that it was about him personally. Like it didn't feel like an ego thing to me. It felt more about what he viewed as the rightful way rather than him just wanting maximum power.
Right. He never really set the strategy. Well, I had to take that back. He's a tactical genius, right? And there's a strategic element to all of that. But as it comes to politics and guiding, he's always been very ignorant to some of that, and perhaps willfully, because I think he did attempt to learn it the last of the it was a greater good, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So he did learn a little bit there, but it wasn't something that he excels at or something he really wanted to. It wasn't his interest level either. So for him to be the heir to the Empire in an Imperial empire, emperor type of, way just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't either. Like, to me, it feels like his loyalty still would be to Palpatine.
Right. Yeah. So there's always something behind it that's driving it. He likes the chess game of it all.
Yeah.
And it could be that Ahsoka doesn't know Thrawn as well as we do. So it could be that that's her interpretation of what he's doing. This must be what he wants. Whereas she might not have the full picture of what's behind the scenes too.
That's a great point.
I just wonder how much too, since we're on the topic of Thrawn, like how much time has passed, number one, right? And then what happened to him when he's been out in the middle of wherever with Ezra, and how much that's changed him. Like, are we going to get just the exact same Thrawn, or are we going to get a slightly different, twisted Thrawn? Like, maybe, I guess what I'm saying is, if I had to make a defense for why it could potentially be now he's thinking about himself, maybe he was changed in that time when he was out there, and now he's thinking, hey, I'm coming back. Palpatine's dead. Maybe I am the heir to the Empire. Again, this kind of flies in the face of what the books were about, and I don't really care at this point on one way or the other. But I'm just trying to think of ways that he would suddenly have that kind of change. We just don't know enough about what happened to him. But
yeah, it just doesn't quite we don't have that connection quite yet.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to a scene that we've already discussed, but Morgan Elsbeth here on the bridge. I think the other thing that I had in my notes that stood out was just that the RA-7 droids that we see on the left and right hand side. They look like RA-7 droids, which would be the Imperial probe droids, or I'm sorry, Imperial protocol droids. We've seen different variations, different colors, and all that stuff. So I guess that would line up with it being still a ship, being an Imperial ship, Thrawn's personal Imperial ship, being run by Imperial droids all this time, caretakers or whatever. But
this gold aesthetic,
that's what's throwing me off. Like, it's so unique.
It's actually design intent behind it. It's not utilitarian. That's the part that's really interesting. Just the stuff at the ceiling, right, with these different circles that are suspended. It's just there's a design element to all of this. Rather than just mass production, do the same thing every single time. So it's really interesting who is behind this ship. Like, what fleet is it a part of? Is this the interpretation of a Chiss fleet? I mean, I don't want to oversell Chiss involvement at this point, because it probably creates a whole lot of mess for us. But that there is some element to that is really interesting, and that they've kept any Chiss out of here would be wise for at this moment of where we're at.
I wonder too, like the circles. I was just thinking about this, but and Dale just brought up too, like the Sith Internal, right? So the Sith Internal is kind of like those hardcore, devout folks to Palpatine. But the only other time that I can recall, I could be wrong, I'm probably wrong, but the only other time I recall these kind of round, circular things like this, aside from what the Rebels were using, was in The Last Jedi, when we saw them in the throne room. So Snoke was using similar tech like this.
Right.
So I don't want to draw a conclusion to all of that, but I'm just trying to think like because it is a very unique design, and these guys are looking off on the right-hand side. Typically the Imperials looked at square monitors with very, what I would call industrial kind of aesthetic, right?
Sure.
Not like this. This is more of an organic kind of thing, very similar again to what we saw in Last Jedi, but who knows?
And I did zoom in as far as I could, given the quality of the trailer online to look. And they do very much look like charts, like star charts and things like that. So very still functional for what they're doing on the bridge of a ship. So I didn't see any other, at least obvious connections in that way.
Yeah. Okay. So the $9 million question is about whether or not this is the world between worlds. And I'll go to you first, Lauren.
Did we miss Morgan Elsbeth in that?
Where's that?
I think did we not talk about Morgan Elsbeth?
Oh, did you have more to say? Sorry.
Oh yeah. So in the interviews this morning with Morgan Elsbeth, or with Diana Lee and Sato, who plays Morgan Elsbeth, so she made sure it was very clear that the character is very loyal and dedicated to Thrawn, and it is unwavering.
Right.
So any ambition, she really does. She has none except in service of Admiral Thrawn. So I think it's an important affirmation to hear of where this character is, because when you talk about character motives and do they change, are they shifting? No, for this character, it is, at least in this moment, or maybe for most of the series, it is very narrow, very direct, very specific.
Yeah. You can almost see it too. Like, she's almost kind of smirking, like, yeah, he's coming back. Right.
I mean, we felt it in Mandalorian, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. She's willing to die for him. Okay, sorry, he bought you a little bit more time, Lauren.
Sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, no. So, World Between Worlds, yes or no?
Yeah, that's okay, because my answer is it didn't change in that time. I think it has to be the World Between Worlds, because we have those like blue lines kind of, and then we also have just in general, it's like very ethereal looking with the stars and the fog and like the mistiness. So I feel like that has to be what this is. I'd be shocked if it was not that.
Anything else?
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's what I think. Is it actually in the World Between Worlds, though, is the part that I'm struggling a little bit with, because in some other shots, especially when they begin fighting, it appears like there is landscape around them as well. So this almost feels like a summoning point. You see the lines that are behind Ray Stevenson's character there, Balin.
Yeah.
They're coming in. Like, everything is kind of pointing towards the middle. So that this feels like a summoning place. Kind of like we were talking about with Tython and the summoning stone.
Yeah, you can kind of see that pillar you're talking about here, just to the right of him or left of him on the screen.
And there are some others that seem more interspersed, but these do feel like they are creating something of a, of a circle here, or something of a gathering place, which would, and again, with all of the lights and the equipment, we've seen this in Rebels, but they were always on the outside, not necessarily the inside. So again, is it, what exactly is it? Or is this a gateway? I mean, it's probably just a gateway, but but we do see terrain out and beyond all of this. So it's masked by this, this feel of like a map that you're just engulfed by, but there is something here though.
Yeah. So I want to think this is the World Between Worlds just because it looks like that on the outside. If I'm going to poke holes in that, my own theory here, number one, unless they're taking a different creative approach with the live action, the World Between Worlds is completely black. The only thing you had that was of color was the lines and the trails, right? And then I went back and watched the Rebels episodes last night just to confirm all of this. So this would be a different take on it if that were the case. There was no kind of like structures in the World Between Worlds. It literally just kind of open roads that took you to different places. But could this be the World Between Worlds on the outside, like you mentioned, and this is some kind of a vergence or control room or something, right? A nexus point that you can use to kind of control where you want to go within it. I think all of that makes sense. The one thing that really kind of stands out, no pun intended, is these light poles.
Right.
And going back to Rebels, in the episode that was just before the World Between Worlds, I think it was something about the wolves. I forget now. But the context of how they found it was the Empire was excavating. They came across this thing, and these lights were everywhere. They had something similar, right? There was all this excavation equipment. There were lighting everywhere, and that's where they found the mural with the Mortis family, right? Which was kind of like the opening passageway, or how they would use it, open up the World Between Worlds. So that seems like this is probably what this could be as well. This could be some just excavation or equipment that's laying around. Either way, all of this is super intriguing because it does beg the question again, like, why is he standing here in the middle? He's almost in front of that thing, right? Like saying, you can't, I'm not going to let you touch this thing. You're not going to use it for whatever reason.
Oh, you're right. It is kind of like a central control point of some.
Yeah. I mean, you got all the lines, all the vectors that are all kind of converging there on the middle there. So, where my mind went was like, okay, well, he's taking a last stand. You're not getting any further than this kind of thing, especially when he ignites the lightsaber right here.
Right.
Which again, I don't want to put her on the offensive, but then we get to this shot and she's almost smirking like, challenge accepted kind of thing. This is the best shot we got though, too. If you look in the background, you can kind of see almost what looked like, I don't know, the clouds, constellations.
Something, yeah. Continents.
Yeah. Nebulas, if it's a map room of some sort.
And it might be just the sky in the background, but yeah. It's difficult to tell.
Yeah. But yeah, and so we'll just kind of step through all of this, but yeah, you can see them fighting.
Let's go back to the establishing shot of Balin though here.
Yeah.
And so these are the comments I wanted that Ray Stevenson made. I wanted to do about the aesthetics of the armor. Look at the armor. He used words to describe this character: Arthurian, knight, legend, quest.
Yep.
Right. I mean, these are very, very embedded in what you see aesthetically with the dual layers of armor on the pauldron and on the bicep. Again, the design of the tunic as well, and the gauntlets. So I like the idea that this is some idea, like some interpretation of Imperial Knights to draw some from that, and just give you another excuse to go back and dig into some more RPGs.
Star Wars,
yeah, an old I think they were in the comics as well. But I like that aspect. It looks very much like Sean Connery right here too, which it just makes me so happy. I love Sean Connery.
Yeah,
who doesn't love Sean Connery?
Well, that's because the beard. Let's be honest. Hey, you have somebody to cosplay now.
I have another cosplay.
Yeah, rather than George Lucas, you can do this guy now. That's not that wasn't a slight. I think you could pull off a George Lucas. I mean that. I love you. I'm being serious. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Am I making it awkward?
No, you are. I think I made it awkward. Sorry. You look nothing like George Lucas. I don't even know what I'm talking about here. Okay, so back to the armor though. Jedi. Okay, so assuming these guys, again, going back to my whack theory that they're defenders and they've been in the World Between Worlds, or they've been defenders of the World Between Worlds for thousands of years. The fact that he's still wearing armored wearing armor just in general.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah, well, that dates him, right? Because prior to the Clone Wars,
and look at the lightsaber design a little bit too.
It does look kind of archaic.
It does, yeah.
Right? So what I was saying is, prior to the Clone Wars, the Jedi had given up on armor. They hadn't worn armor in forever. It's been a long time, like thousands of years. This goes back to the Old Republic. They ditched all that because they didn't need it. But if he's still running around with it, right? For him, this is kind of like, hey, this was in style for me back in the day, and I'm still going to don it. There was a discussion, too, that was happening. Where was it? It was on I think it was Anthony Carboni was talking about this, and they got into this a little bit because Carboni picked up on it as well. He said, this is a very unique design. Your outfit looks very unique. Like, it doesn't look Sith. It doesn't look Jedi. It looks something completely different. And maybe that's kind of what we're all saying here. But
right. Yeah, very intentional.
Yeah. And at least it looks different from what we've ever seen in canon. Does it look atypical for some of the stuff that we've seen in Legends and going back to the Old Republic? No, probably not. But that could be a good reason why, we're seeing these types of things.
And again, Ray Stevenson said, this guy has been around for a while in the galaxy.
True.
So how long is a while?
It also goes with that King Arthur comparison, where if he's still wearing this very like traditional, like antiquated looking armor, that goes with this feel of like, this is a very long standing role that he has had, maybe.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, if he says there can be only one, I'm going to be so happy.
I'm going to be happy because now we're talking Highlander and you're speaking my love language at that point. So I was trying to pick up on his fighting style. It's a very unique, aggressive fighting style. Like, I don't remember Jedi starting this way.
Yeah, not quite enough to go on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a particular swing here. I did like Ahsoka's foot in the back. Like,
your first response was, "What is she doing?"
Well, and that was because here's
I know it was the first time looking.
The first time looking at it, but then you think about it, it's like she's actually doing the moves that she does in the animation.
Right.
Like she was very like foot out. She does that little thing, that pirouette kind of tacks and stuff.
She's very dancer-like as she fights.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, right? Very choreographed in terms of how she's fighting. So good that they've kind of kept that going here. You get another shot here. Again, the lines look a little bit different. Now we've got some white.
Yeah, now they're like yellowish looking. That part threw me off. And if you look at the top, as you get towards the top of the screen, that also appears to be less of that whitish blue. And you get into more of these warmer tones. So is there something going on while they're fighting? Again, that maybe Ahsoka is there to stop, maybe, or whatever, maybe he's there to stop her, whatever it might be. But I have a feeling she's there to stop him, because that's usually how these things go.
Yeah. We talked about this scene a little while ago, but this definitely looks like Ahsoka's ship going into spinning, because that's a new trick. And
I hear it works.
It looks, at least the way they cut this, it looks like Shin's attacking her, right? You can see Shin here.
Oh, yeah. I think this is definitely... We don't see Shin's ship, though. That's a tongue twister. Yeah. We don't see her actual ship, though, but I love her headset. Look at her headset. It's very golden and very...
You High Republic?
Kind of, yeah, very spidery almost looking. Sorry, Laura, what was you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, it made me think of the one in the prequels with like the metal with like the two bands going across.
Right. Yeah, it does have that inspiration, doesn't it? I didn't catch that.
What if they pull back and she's in a vector?
That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be crazy, yeah.
That would be mind-blowing for me. And vectors, for anybody that's not aware, those are the primary fighters that they flew in during the High Republic era.
Those would be some archaic things by this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even so, even look at the style of her tunic. Again, it's still very similar to what we have with Balin. Again,
she's got some armor going on too.
Same with the pauldrons and the armors on the arms. Yeah. And then just the design of the kind of the breast area of the tunic.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely loving this design, by the way. It's so perfect. It's it pulls from Mandalorian type of mentality that we've got right now to help you kind of embed you in it, but also this very old world. I think Dale said Old English in the chat at one point, which I think is very spot on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sky agrees with me. Reminds me of the Imperial Knights. Thank you, Sky.
Light powered ships, lightsaber powered. Oh, true. Like that's a unique characteristic of the vector, right? They put the built into that, and the kyber crystal is what powers the entire ship.
Yeah, but a synthetic crystal can't do that.
Well, there you go. It's one way to poke a hole in that theory, right?
Can
they?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about this Darth Vader moment. on a smaller scale. He's only got 3 or 4, so let's not get carried away. But I mean, nonetheless, it looks freaking cool as heck. And you can see here, I mean, you can make an argument that this is very Sith-like. This looks very Luke Skywalker to me, like in Return of the Jedi and or at the, in his big appearance at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, he's very calm and collected. He's on a mission. He's just doing what needs to be done. There's no real emotion going through any of this. It was actually, when I first saw it, I was like, this is Darth Malgus kind of vibe going, right?
Right, yeah.
This bulking, lumbering, dark, cloaked figure in front of you that is just this immovable object and unstoppable force,
Yeah. But he's using a force choke. And so sticking with traditional Jedi Sith abilities, what's off limits, what's on,
Probably straight a little bit from the path if that's...
Yeah, he would have to have straight if he was a Jedi at some point. But, maybe he's more of the Luke Skywalker approach where it's like, hey, whatever works, right? It's about the mission. And how I get there, I have to break a few eggs.
I don't think that's Luke Skywalker, but okay.
Oh, I think...
That was with Dark Troopers. That's
No,
not
he choked the what do you call him?
He felt threatened.
By Gamorrean guards?
Yeah, they were really threatening.
They're really smelly.
They were very offensive at the very least.
Lauren, this has to evoke memories of Rogue One, but any thoughts as to why he's definitely on the offensive, right? He looks like he's coming into this New Republic ship. We see the New Republic soldiers. They're getting choked. They're getting shot. What's going on here?
That's what I was thinking, is that he must be looking for someone or something, because it looks like he's kind of just, I mean, he's very purposeful in the way he's going through the ship.
Meandering through all of this.
Yeah, like y'all said, it's a very emotionless. He's getting from point A to point B, and whoever is in between him, he's going to get rid of them. But it doesn't seem angry to me either, though. Like we would expect with Vader. Like it's very like a rageful type of response. This, to me, the feeling I got is he's just trying to get through to whatever he needs to get.
Yeah, he's just on a mission at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
I did have a fun, it was more of a fun comical theory this poor sap that's getting force choked. It was, what if we had Matt Lanter that his thing. So if you remember, Matt Lanter was also in The Mandalorian and he ended up dying. He was the New Republic guard.
Yeah.
What if every time there was a New Republic guard that had to get killed or get maimed or otherwise destroyed?
This is Matt Lanter.
Like this poor guy's. Yeah. It was just Matt Lanter every time.
Right.
You just couldn't quite tell it was him, but it was always him.
Yeah. He was like the Kenny of South Park. Just died every episode.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I knew you understood me.
Yep. Okay, so we get this real quick shot, the only shot of Ezra.
We get the backside too.
Well, true. That's right. We get this angle of him. And I suppose this is Sabine just listening to one of many. They were always recording these things during Star Wars Rebels. That was kind of Kanan had them, and they would do them. But it looks like she's just maybe thinking about the last mission. This doesn't look like the scene where he's kind of giving everybody their orders and what they have to do, but it could be that because it's hard to tell really from this angle. But
do you think this is a discussion, Lauren? Or do you think this is just her? This is just her a picture of Ezra that she's just able to call up and think about.
I almost feel like she's just kind of looking through old recordings. Maybe she's looking for something to go off of. Maybe she's just kind of reminiscing and remembering their time together. But to me, it didn't feel like a conversation.
Yeah,
I would really love if it was something that, cause we've seen this a number of times. It's a pretty common trope where you need that call to action. And it's like the Princess Leia thing, right? You help me, like what R2 did to Luke in Last Jedi. And the book was a little more successful than the movie. But the idea that you call up something from your past or something you've heard before, but it's the right message at the right time that tells you, okay, hey, get off your butt. It's time to get back in the fight.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that would be really cool.
So that would be really nice to be able to have that. I do like the communicator. This is Phantom Menace, specific. I had this toy. But yeah, the communicator is directly out of Phantom Menace here.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's a nice little Easter egg. There also Emin was it Isfandi?
Right.
Is the actor that we see here. So crazy. They've not officially confirmed that he's playing Ezra.
But he's done it, yeah.
Anywhere, but he was out on Twitter yesterday, at least confirming that this was indeed him. He was the one that's been the front runner. He's been rumored for a number of months now as portraying Ezra. It's unclear as to whether Ezra, we talked about this too, like, is Ezra going to be a part of the series? Do they save him to the very end and that brings up a season 2 or whatever else? I don't, at least right now, unless they could be just hiding this. It doesn't look like we're going to get Ezra anytime soon. But either way, the point is that Emin Esfandi has already kind of come out and said, yeah, that's me. Whether that's a indirect confirmation that he will play Ezra in later bits, scenes, seasons, whatever, is to be determined at this point.
Yeah, and again, for those that might not be familiar with the name, you have seen him. He was Aladdin in the live-action Aladdin show that came out from Disney a couple years ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I didn't see that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
So before we move on from that, I think the other part about Sabine, and if you mentioned this earlier on, I apologize, but apparently in the trailer that we have not seen, or the extended trailer, I guess maybe, she is wielding Ezra's lightsaber. Oh, yeah. So whether she has that... And you watched these episodes. Did he give that to her at the end of Rebels, or does she have that at the end of Rebels? I couldn't remember that part.
So he gets shot. His lightsaber is like the where its location is unknown at the end of it. He drops it, I think, at one point.
Oh, okay.
It's during that whole battle, and he gets shot a couple times, and then he ends up having to use the Force. So, and I think I want to say it falls off one of the structures there on Lothal. So. Long story short is apparently they find it and they've given it to her because, who else would use it?
So it makes sense that she would have recovered it if this is not a flashback scene or anything like that.
No. But yeah, I did mention it very quickly at the beginning that she was in that scene. She was using it. So now what I didn't understand was she using it because she just ignited it? And again, reminiscing, is she using it as a defense weapon of some sort or an offense weapon of some sort? She's fully been trained, right? She was trained by Kanan on how to use a lightsaber, specifically the Darksaber, but that would be a really cool twist on again for Sabine to kind of be running around with this thing, wielding it in the name of Ezra Bridger.
Right. Yeah. And it was just the thing that kicked into my head was the lightsaber hanging from Ezra's belt there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so no doubt in our minds, at least from some of the shots we've seen, I'll see if I can if I can stop this thing. Let me just go frame by frame here.
Yeah, it gets a little bit easier here in a second.
Yeah, you can see the blade, the hilt, I guess, of the right there. But we are definitely looking at
Is this the same type of lightsaber we see from the other two characters, or is this more traditional? It's in these close-up shots, it almost looks like a more traditional saber, but as you pull back, it does seem like more of the orange we had before. So I just don't know if this is like a new lightsaber in general, because the theory we have kind of is disconnected from some of that there.
Yeah, I don't know. Lauren, take that one.
I think it has to be the orange ones. When I look at that, to me, it looks the same. I mean, the hilt style. I mean, when I see that hilt style, I think Inquisitor. But
absolutely,
I think that the blade looks like that same orange to me. That same kind of like slightly dimmer than other lightsabers. So I think it's still the same type. And they are wearing the armor too.
Yeah. So again, this is the third lightsaber wielding orange character in this trailer alone. And so it's not just two. Now we have an Inquisitor thrown in. And we're exactly right there with you, Lauren. The hilt is unmistakable. The armor is very consistent with what we've seen all of the other brothers and sisters wear in various ways. And so Ahsoka seems to attract these folks quite often these days. Or
she could be hunting them down too, right? I mean,
I guess I'm not sure though, if it is an Inquisitor, why the orange blade?
That's the part that when you're up close, it almost looks like it's more white, but then when it stills, it's not.
It looks solid. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part that was a little bit confusing, but no, exactly. I think that's the hole to poke in it, is that why would we have an Imperial Inquisitor, with that hilt, but it wouldn't be more of the traditional lightsaber that we've seen everywhere else in the content before this.
Well, and I'd said earlier, if they are kind of, again, serving this higher purpose, they don't really hold allegiance to, traditional Sith accoutrements or whatever, right?
Accoutrement.
Then maybe at some point they came across a Sith Inquisitor who was trying to get into the World Between Worlds. They stopped them. Oh, look, we have another blade we can use for our purposes. This could be a completely different character, by the way, or it could be one of the characters we've already seen just wearing a helmet. It's really hard to tell. I would imagine this is Shin because it looks way too thin to be Balin. Balin looks like
he's a big
dude, right? Yeah. So,
it'd be curious because she didn't have a double wielding lightsaber in the original shot. So,
yeah,
I think it's a third person.
It probably is. That would be the best theory. Yeah,
I
would
think
agree.
She's getting chased from this facility. So in a later shot, you can actually see more of what this is. Actually, right here, I believe, as you're coming up on it, you can see in the back left.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, it does. It looks like, and these are definitely engines being assembled. There's engine parts all over the place.
I think this might be a disassembly plant The
Oh,
other
that's a
side
good,
of
yeah,
that too.
that's
because
right. That's probably better.
with these with these shipyards they had on Coruscant or wherever else, they were of course dismantling both the Imperial fleets as well as the whatever the fleet is, the Rebel Alliance.
Rebel Alliance.
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah. So could it be in one of these types of things? But why is Ahsoka here? Is the question, right? This is different than the temple like location we had before, and I believe this is where she's jumping out of the window. All these scenes seem to be connected in that way. This seems to be the same episode.
Maybe this is the very first episode, and we're getting kind of this. Here's what she's been. Earlier, we talked about what has she been doing. Well, maybe she's still hot on the trail of remnants of the Sith Inquisitorial Orium. What the heck's it called?
Intorius.
Sure.
Inquisitorius. Yes.
She's hunting Sith Inquisitors, and this is the way they kind of open the whole series up by saying, "Oh, look at her. She's hunting these down. This person never gets his face shown. She kills him, and get title credits or something, or the main title."
Maybe it's an epic opening combat montage.
I hope so. We need another montage. This is here's the extension of the Cankle episode. I'm sorry. This is the extension of the fight with these droids here, the Praetorian droids or whatever.
It is like this all the time, people behind the camera and behind the scenes.
They're just so chunky Cankles.
This just doesn't stop.
They're huge.
Cankles are a sensitive subject for Albert.
I'm sorry. I'm not shaming anybody. If you have Cankles, I love you.
Glad I'm wearing pants, I guess.
Yeah, you don't have shoes on though, which I thought was interesting. Or socks, for that matter, if we're just being completely honest. So I'm fully clothed. I don't know about you, but
you're like extra dressed. You got a jacket and everything else on.
Yeah.
It's indoors, man.
Dude couldn't even get socks on this morning. And then we get the pullback of that. You said, or mentioned, by the way, just kind of as a note, you said they were using a new tech on the Montrails, yeah?
Yeah, I did not a lot of specifics around it, but yeah, it appears like they have changed I don't know if it's the material. They call it the technology behind what Ahsoka or what Rosario Dawson, thank you, Mike, is wearing as a headdress for the Montrails. So it reduces the amount of time from a 3+ hour event to get ready to something closer to like an hour and a half or 2 hours, which is really great for Ms. Dawson. There we go. It's a little easier to say that. So much easier to say, or for her to get dressed in that way. But also I'm curious about how this feels like it flows. Does it move a little bit more? We don't really get a lot of great scenes here to be able to identify some of that, but it does seem a little bit more natural. The creases aren't as deep. I think they don't look as rubbery or latexy in some ways. I think they're still there, and I think they're important to be there because she is older, and so aging is just a thing, right? So
yeah,
I think they're longer too, right? Or is that just that angle that they looked longer?
I think she's standing a little bit kind of at an angle, so one of them does appear a bit longer. But I think they're longer than in general from what we've seen in some of the other content. Is that
trying to go back to this to see? They could be a little longer. I don't know.
We'd have to see side by side, but I think they're probably going to be pretty close, though.
I mean, I think if they were longer, I think it's a good thing because I used to feel like they were too short.
Yeah, I would
whatever
agree.
they did, it looks good.
It looks better. I would agree.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, like, if you look at the innocent bystanders, look at them. They're just like, you see them back there?
Oh, they're fixed. They're not moving. and there's one up on the catwalk too, on the one that pulls back a little bit, and literally it does not move the entire time.
But I'm saying, like, they're just watching, like they're on their lunch break, going, "Yeah, this is different."
Frozen in shock.
Which is what I would do, honestly, if two people suddenly just busted out lightsabers and going at each other. Yeah, like, why not enjoy the show?
I'd be putting money down on which one we thought was going to win.
Look, they're right there, they're like, motionless.
Yep.
Just another day on the job for them. So going back to this shot, not this one, but here. Come on. Enhance. Okay. So here's Ahsoka again, looks like that same facility, right? Jumping through the window because that's super dramatic.
Well, being chased. Is
she being chased? Because this person's running away from her. Look,
is it? They're coming into the frame, though.
No, they're running away. Watch. But they're coming into the frame, but look, they're leaving. She's going out.
Oh, so they were sitting at the console, probably coming back.
Yeah, that's at first I was with you. I thought it was somebody chasing her, and it was black, and I thought, okay, maybe it's the Inquisitor, but I guess the inverse is true, right? This person was probably working, going, "Holy crap, what is happening today here at work?"
Yeah, they were like, "This job ain't worth it."
Right.
And she's like, "Look at this cool move I learned from Mace Windu before he died."
Yeah. I know not to jump more than 8,000 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not.
Yeah,
even
he didn't have a
touch
choice.
that one.
He didn't have a choice. Okay, so she jumps out the window like a maniac, and then I think this is where we get her landing, right? She comes crashing through on the next scene here.
Right. Yeah. This all appear to be this like a hangar type of situation. Again, all of these scenes seem connected with this Inquisitor-like character that we had just a minute ago.
Sorry, I'm going to use my mouse because that's a little annoying. But yeah, so she lands in typical Ahsoka fashion, right? On all fours.
Hero landing.
Yeah. And you can see more of the engines and all that stuff. You know,
right.
I do like the dismantling because that's consistent with Fallen Order and what we're seeing
feels
in
like an old
Mando.
feels like an old airfield, right? Where just everything's in disrepair. It's just decommissioned, so they just use it for spare parts and for whatever else is going on.
And then we get to the Doctor.
Yeah, the good doctor himself, David Tennant.
David Tennant coming back as Huang. Dave Filoni, when asked who was going to play him, he actually responded it was the Doctor that's playing him, which is very cool.
Interesting enough, all of David Tennant's lines were already recorded before they started filming. So that
did they really?
Yeah, so they could actually play David Tennant, or they could play Huang, so they could hear the voice as they acted. So they had that interaction.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, he has a very short, subtle line about perhaps it's time to begin again. And I think a lot of people have taken that to mean a lot of different things, depending on what you want it to mean.
Well, he's clearly on Lothal, so this seems to be very much associated with Sabine, right?
Yeah.
Although it's within the context of Ahsoka giving this dialogue as well, so it's a little double meaning there, but
sure,
it definitely seems to be with Sabine in this case.
I think he's talking to Sabine. That would be my guess.
It would make sense, right? Again, this where she's trying to figure out what the next step should be. What is it that she should be doing? Yeah,
which I think is the search for Ezra all over again. Okay, and then the final shot is just her doing her, Jedi pose with the two lightsabers, and cut to the title.
I love that last shot. Like chills.
Yeah, I mean, it's so iconic for her character. We've seen it both in the animation and we've seen it in live action, and it's almost kind of like her little signature move. But yeah, the logo is the same, right? They didn't change anything.
Right,
on
no
that.
change to the logo.
Okay,
love the animation. I love the logo. I think it's just so perfect for the world between world vibes, but also just the way they've integrated it here is just really artistic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's the trailer.
BDN8183 just joined the chat and has a question for you, Albert. I believe it's directed at you individually.
Have I missed the Mara Jade Sabayoth speculation? No, we've got a whole show that we're going to dedicate specifically to that topic, and it is going to be a solo show. Jonesy won't be joining me for that one, neither will Lauren, so I plan to do that by myself. Yeah,
it's going to be more of a presentation.
Right. I present to you Exhibit A, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, more to come on that. I got a lot of strong feelings about Mara Jade and how to weave her into this post in the New Republic era, but I don't think it's lucid truth. Get out of here, dude. So yeah. He's one of our Patreon members and part of our Discord server. I didn't realize that was him.
Definitely feeding the beast on that one.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Appreciate you. You got my back. Okay. All right. So yeah, what did you? I guess kind of final impressions. Jonesy first. Let's go with Lauren. Ladies first. Yeah. Lauren, final impressions on the trailer. How did you like it? What do you think?
I mean, I loved it. I get excited when I watch it. I'm excited to see what direction the show is going to go in. So it definitely accomplished what it set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, really all it needed to do was establish Thrawn, but we get so much more within the context of this show, which I think is what makes it so interesting. Right? So these darker characters coming forward, that there's a conflict aspect of them. Like, what is it that drives them? What is their history? Where are they coming from? And that they've made that compelling. I think this is where Celebration always excels, right? Is that you get to pull back the curtain and just be able to experience a little bit more about where the actors are coming through with the characters. So you can have a totally different appreciation as you watch the content on screen. And so, the timing of being able to release something like this in this scenario, in this situation with Celebration versus they're in the Super Bowl or wherever we've had them in other times, right? This, you get all of that extra context with it. This is why it was so important for us to do the show today rather than dedicating one last night, for Ahsoka. So I'm absolutely loving the vibe, what we got here. I think they're meeting all of the aesthetics, all the things we expect to see. Loving the integration with things like Andor, Mandalorian. I mean, we really are feeling like this is a Rebels, of course. We're feeling like this is all very connected, and that it's actually really cool to feel like Star Wars in general does feel like everybody has a touch point somewhere, and that it is more than just a series of discombobulated and unrelated stories at times. Not that that's not fantastic, but I love that does, even if it's just a very small, narrow thread, that we still get that. I think it's really important for us to feel that, especially in this era of Star Wars that we're in with these characters in particular.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think these are going to, so this along with Skeleton Crew are going to be the 2 live action series that I'm looking forward to the most this year. Oh wait, those are the only 2. No, joking aside,
Womp.
No, I'm excited about the series, and I said it yesterday when we kind of opened up that this very much feels like the knighting of Dave Filoni in a lot of ways, right? The heir to the Empire is really what they're kind of talking about here.
With a capital H?
With a capital H,
Okay.
Dave Filoni and Lucasfilm, and this is an extension of that, right? This is a piece of work that has been years in the making that dates back to Clone Wars, certainly through Rebels. It's got Filoni's signature all over it, which I'm pretty excited about. We're going to get into the mythology of the Force and Force beings and the inner workings of Jedi and Sith and all that. And that's stuff that I really, really love and eat up. And I trust him to do all of that. So, it feels like it is an extension. Someone mentioned, is it Rebels 5? Yeah, I think it is Rebels 5 or, season 5. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. To your point, all of this seems very well orchestrated. It feels very intentional. They've completely...
Great choice of words. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've gone in this whole New Republic era with a lot of thought and intent that dates back probably at least 4 or 5 years ago. And so it's good. It's refreshing, especially coming off the sequel trilogy, right? And kind of just how disconnected and disjointed some of the stories and all that were. And I know you can jump through mental gymnastics all day long to make sense of it all. And that's fine. I can do that too.
That's what we do. Yeah.
That's what we do. But yeah, I mean, to really kind of have a very thoughtful approach to Star Wars storytelling, and knowing that the person in their driver's seat is somebody like Dave Filoni, who is kind of that touchstone and that integral part of that storytelling, is refreshing. I feel like whether you love it or you hate it, you can't deny and you can't argue that this was thought out. And I think more than anything, for us as viewers, as people, as fans of Star Wars, we want to have thoughtful approaches to the storytelling. We want it to mean something, and I think we're going to get that in droves and spades with the Ahsoka series. So yeah, that's how I feel.
I support the way you feel.
Okay.
Second that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
This is good stuff. I mean, we're off to a really solid start for day 2, I think, as well. A lot of news that is coming later this evening. Like we were trying to keep up. We were trying to get ready for the show. We're finished preparing for the show. And then we were trying to keep up with all of the things going on for High Republic and everything else. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
We were trying to do this at Celebration. It was really, really tough.
Yeah.
And this is still challenging. Like, it's like, okay, we thought we were going to try to do some other things, but now it's like, okay, well, we got to work.
At least here you can get away without wearing socks. At Celebration, you can't get away with it. Like, people would notice you with no socks.
They would notice me without socks.
So
I would be like, one way out.
oh yeah, you could just do that. Cosplay is that. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
That sounds unsanitary.
Lino Koi, or Akino Loy. That's the other character that you can do.
Snowkino?
Snowkino.
I'm not that tall.
He's another one. Hey, before we get out of here, just a reminder, we've got another show coming later this evening, 7 p.m. It's going to be a recap of day 2. We'll get into some of the Star Wars publishing stuff that was announced. Holy bananas. Some pretty exciting stuff there on the High Republic front. I haven't even had a chance to dive into all of it. And yeah, we'll get into that as well as all the other things. We'll get into some of the Star Wars Celebration interviews that were done that we didn't really discuss here as well. But yeah, where can people find us and subscribe and all that?
Yeah, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You will find everything you need to know for the live streams for this weekend. 2 down now, 4 more to go. If you can believe that. We are not even halfway through. And of course, we got 2.5 more days of content left. So again, lots of great stuff coming your way. A lot of great things over on the website too, cantinacast.com. You can find all of Lauren's Jedi Novel Archive. Of course, we talked a little about that yesterday. A lot of High Republic stuff coming out. Basically a book every week from her, both spoiler and non-spoilery. And so, yeah, so lots of great things going on right now. And Lauren, you're joining us tonight too, right?
Yes. Yep. I'll be here.
Excellent. Have you had a chance to look into High Republic stuff quite yet?
Yeah. So I've been seeing some of the updates coming out of it, and it looks very exciting. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Is it overwhelming, or is it like, no, just give me more, just give me more?
It's overwhelming. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but in a good way. I think I can handle it.
All right, good. You're doing show notes tonight. Great.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
We'll talk about it after the show.
You were totally set up live on air.
That much. Maybe I can't handle it that much.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. That's the real big one today, of course, but lots of other great content coming your way this evening. So we hope to see you at 7:00 tonight, cantinacast.com/YouTube. Also, we have a Q&A show. We're anticipating a lot of questions here, especially after these first couple of days. So cantinacast.com.
Mara Jade and Sabayoth speculation.
Well, those seem directed at you.
Okay. Well, I'm on the show, so we'll talk about it.
That's why you have to have a presentation episode.
Yeah, I like it.
PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint.
I like it when Lauren says things like video presentation. It's very formal.
Yeah, very formal.
Give a video presentation.
It's not a cinematic cutscene in a video game. It's like, no, it's a video presentation. Right. Very formal.
Very formal.
I love it. Absolutely love it. But your questions, we will try to have answers. So if you want to head over to the website, cantinacast.com/question, get your questions into us. We'll log all of those into the system. We will put all those together here over the next few weeks, and we will get a show together and be able to answer all of those. If you want to make sure that you get your question on the air and answered, please do check out our Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. You can go out there and find the tiers of where this applies to. Patreon members are guaranteed to have their answers or their questions read on air. And at least Albert will answer it if it's about Mara Jade or Sabayoth.
Yeah, that jumps at the top immediately.
I'm not, that tracks.
Yeah.
So anyway, so go out there and check out the Patreon if you would like to support the show in general, or if you want to make sure that your question does get on air.
Okay, well, I'd like to say this was a atypical episode, considering that it took 2 hours to break down a minute and a half of footage. But no, it's not. This is actually what we do all the time. So
it's on time.
Right on time.
Yeah. Well, we had to get over the Elon Musk aspect of things. So.
Yeah, that was at least the first 15 minutes alone.
Yeah, we'll blame that.
So okay, enough of this. We'll see you guys here in just a few hours to talk about all the other day 2 of celebration stuff.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.